Tonight, a serious situation is unfolding in the motorcycle world. Of 15 Japanese motorcycle models that experts say may have crossed a critical line.
Nobody expected this. These motorcycles were engineered to be precise, predictable, and safe. Years of testing, millions in development, endless simulations. But once they hit real roads, something changed. Riders didn't describe them as fast. They described them as too much, too aggressive, too confident, too capable for the situations people were putting them in. Today, we're exposing 15 Japanese motorcycles that didn't just push limits, they lost control of them. Honda CBR 600RR 2024 Reintroduction. The return of the Honda CBR 600RR was supposed to be a victory lap, a nostalgic reminder of Japanese engineering dominance. But behind showroom doors, the story sounds very different. Dealers expected excitement, fast turnarounds, and loyal supersport buyers lining up. Instead, many are quietly staring at unsold units sitting longer than planned, watching interest cool while inventory pressure builds. The CBR 600RR didn't arrive cheap, and that's where the tension started. In a market where buyers are hyper-aware of insurance costs, financing rates, and used bike alternatives, the price suddenly feels heavy. Rumors began circulating among sales managers that Honda underestimated how far the supersport buyer base has shrunk, especially in the US. Dealers won't say it publicly, but some are already whispering about backroom incentives, dealer cash, and quiet adjustments just to keep floor space moving. The bike's intensity, once its biggest selling point, has become a double-edged sword. Riders admire it, photograph it, sit on it, then hesitate. They compare it to torque-rich nakeds, middleweight twins, even used leader bikes selling for similar money. That hesitation is deadly for inventory. As weeks turn into months, pressure builds. Rumors spread that some dealers are bundling discounts, flexible financing, or throwing in gear just to soften the deal, anything to avoid openly slashing MSRP. The spicier talk is that regional warehouses still have units inbound, creating a backlog no one wants to admit exists. Supersports were never meant to pile up, and yet here they are, pristine, aggressive, untouched. Some insiders claim Honda's confidence in the model's legacy blinded them to the reality of 2025 buying behavior. Others say the bike is simply too serious for today's roads, too demanding for casual riders, and too expensive for impulse buyers. The result is a slow burn of anxiety. Dealers feel trapped between respecting the bike's prestige and needing to move metal. When a motorcycle like the CBR 600RR doesn't fly off the floor, it sends a ripple through the network. Price sensitivity increases, rumors of upcoming incentives grow louder, and buyers start waiting, convinced that a drop is coming. That waiting game becomes self-fulfilling. Interest stalls, inventory sits, and the narrative quietly shifts from legendary return to how long can we hold these? No recalls, no headlines, just a creeping sense that something went off script. The CBR 600RR didn't fail mechanically. It collided with a market that no longer moves on reputation alone, and now dealers are left balancing pride against pressure, hoping the next buyer doesn't ask the question they fear most. Will this be cheaper next month? Yamaha R9, new generation. The Yamaha R9 didn't enter the market quietly, but what's happening around it now is anything but loud. On launch, the R9 was framed as the future, modern, torque-rich, smarter than old-school supersports. Dealers expected it to hit the sweet spot between hype and accessibility. Instead, many are now dealing with a very different reality. Units sitting, buyers circling but not committing, and an uncomfortable amount of inventory pressure creeping in faster than planned. The issue isn't interest. People are absolutely talking about the R9, but talk doesn't clear floor space. The price positioning sparked the first wave of tension. Buyers walk in excited, then pause when they see the numbers stacked against rising insurance, financing, and the sheer volume of alternatives. Rumors from inside dealership networks suggest Yamaha's confidence in demand may have been a little too optimistic, especially in regions already saturated with high-performance machines. Sales staff quietly admit the R9 attracts lookers more than buyers, and that's a dangerous place to be. The bike's aggressive mid-range torque, which reviewers praised, has become a point of hesitation for real-world riders who worry it's almost too eager, too immediate, too much for daily riding. That uncertainty feeds into a larger rumor circulating among dealers. Early buyers are waiting because they expect prices to soften. Once that belief takes hold, momentum dies. Some dealers are already experimenting behind the scenes, extended test rides, flexible financing terms, subtle add-ons, anything to sweeten the deal without officially touching MSRP. The spicier chatter suggests Yamaha has more R9 units in the pipeline than dealers are comfortable with, creating a looming sense of oversupply. No one wants to be the first to blink and slash prices, but everyone is watching everyone else. The R9's positioning as a new kind of supersport also complicated things. Buyers compare it to naked bikes, to sport tourers, even to used leader machines, and every comparison slows the sale. Dealers whisper that the R9 is caught in a psychological trap. Too expensive to be impulsive, too modern to feel familiar, and too capable for riders who are increasingly cautious. As weeks pass, the narrative subtly shifts. Instead of, "This is the next big thing," the tone becomes, "Let's see where pricing goes." That's when inventory turns from asset to liability. The anxiety isn't public, but it's real. Sales managers check regional stock numbers more often. Buyers sense leverage and start negotiating harder. Rumors spread online about potential incentives, and suddenly, everyone's waiting for a deal that may or may not officially exist. The Yamaha R9 hasn't failed. It's stuck in a market standoff where expectation, pricing, and timing collided. And when a high-profile motorcycle like this stalls, the pressure doesn't just sit on the bike. It sits on every dealer floor that needs that space cleared before the next shipment arrives. Kawasaki Ninja ZX4RR. When Kawasaki launched the Ninja ZX4RR, the reaction was immediate and explosive. A screaming four-cylinder in a small displacement class felt like rebellion against everything the market had become. Enthusiasts loved the idea. Dealers loved the attention. But once the hype settled, a much messier reality started forming behind the scenes. The ZX4RR arrived with a price tag that shocked buyers who expected small bike money for a small displacement machine. Instead, customers were staring at numbers that edged dangerously close to larger, more forgiving motorcycles. Dealers quickly realized the bike was attracting a very specific kind of buyer, knowledgeable, nostalgic, and extremely price-aware. That combination is dangerous for inventory. Riders would test ride it, rev it, smile ear to ear, then walk away saying the same thing. "I love it, but I need to think about it." That hesitation started stacking up units. Rumors began circulating quietly that Kawasaki underestimated how many riders were willing to actually pay for the experience rather than just admire it. The ZX4RR's high-revving nature, once its headline feature, became part of the problem. In real-world riding, it demands commitment. Insurance companies took notice. Buyers started factoring in ownership costs beyond MSRP, and suddenly, the bike felt expensive in every direction. Dealers, meanwhile, were watching inventory sit longer than expected for a model that was never supposed to sit at all. Spicier talk inside dealer groups suggests some regions received more units than demand could realistically absorb, creating silent pressure to move bikes without publicly touching the price. Sales managers reportedly began hinting at flexibility, extended financing, and dealer-installed add-ons just to keep conversations alive. The real anxiety came when buyers started waiting on purpose. Online chatter about potential incentives spread, and once customers believed prices might soften, they stopped buying. That waiting game hit the ZX4RR hard. The bike exists in an awkward psychological space, too specialized for casual riders, too expensive for younger buyers, and too small for riders who equate price with displacement. Dealers are stuck protecting the bike's prestige while quietly worrying about floor space. Some insiders whisper that Kawasaki's gamble on emotion over practicality backfired in a cautious market. Others claim the bike arrived at the wrong economic moment, when excitement alone isn't enough to close deals. Either way, the tension is real. The ZX4RR didn't lose control on the road. It lost control of its market position. And as inventory lingers, rumors of behind-the-scenes price movement grow louder, turning what was supposed to be a halo product into a slow-burning stress test for dealers trying to avoid being the first to blink. Kawasaki Ninja ZX-10R, 2025. The Kawasaki Ninja ZX-10R has always carried a dangerous reputation, but what's happening with the current generation has started making dealers uneasy in a very different way. This bike was never meant to be subtle, but it was meant to move. Instead, in several markets, it's sitting. Not abandoned, not ignored, just waiting. And that waiting is where the anxiety begins. The ZX-10R arrives with race DNA baked into every component, from its brutally stiff chassis to electronics that were clearly designed with lap times in mind. Dealers expected serious riders to line up. What they didn't expect was how narrow that serious rider group has become. The price immediately filters buyers, and that filter is harsher in 2025 than it ever was before. Riders walk in knowing exactly what the ZX-10R is capable of, but capability now comes with consequences. Insurance quotes shock buyers before paperwork even starts. Financing stretches thin. And suddenly, the conversation shifts from desire to caution. Rumors inside dealer circles suggest that ZX-10R inventory is quietly becoming a stress point, especially in urban areas where buyers rarely get to exploit even a fraction of the bike's performance. The machine's reputation works against it. Everyone knows it's extreme, and that extremity scares away riders who once would have taken the plunge. Sales staff admit the same pattern keeps repeating. Customers admire it, talk about World SBK heritage, then hesitate when reality sets in. As weeks pass, whispers start circulating about dealers being more flexible than they're willing to admit publicly. Extended financing, subtle discounts, bundled accessories, anything to avoid the perception of a straight price drop. The spicier rumor is that Kawasaki's production confidence outpaced actual demand, leaving some regions with more ZX-10Rs than buyers ready to absorb them. Once buyers sense that imbalance, the power dynamic flips. They wait. They negotiate harder. They assume a deal is coming. And when buyers wait, inventory becomes deadweight. The ZX-10R's electronics also play into the unease. Traction control, launch control, power modes, they make the bike feel manageable at first, almost friendly. But experienced riders warn that this friendliness can be deceptive. The moment the safety net loosens, the bike reminds you exactly what it is. That dual personality feeds the rumor mill, a machine that feels controlled until it suddenly isn't. Dealers now face a quiet dilemma. They can't cheapen a flagship without damaging the brand, but they also can't afford to let units stagnate. The ZX-10R didn't go out of control because it's flawed. It went out of control because it exists at the extreme edge of what the current market is willing to tolerate. In a time when riders are cautious and space is limited, even legends can become liabilities, and the longer these bikes sit, the louder the unspoken question grows. How far will prices have to move before control returns? Honda CBR 1000 RRR Fireblade SP 2025. The Honda CBR 1000 RRR Fireblade SP was built to dominate, but in the current market, it's creating a very different kind of tension, one that dealers are increasingly nervous about. This motorcycle was never meant to be subtle or forgiving. It's a race-bred machine with a price tag to match, and that combination has turned into a quiet inventory headache. Dealers expected the Fireblade SP to be rare, exclusive, and fast-moving. Instead, in several regions, it's sitting longer than anyone predicted. The problem starts the moment buyers look beyond the spec sheet. the price alone pushes the bike into a psychological danger zone where riders start comparing it not just to competitors, but to reality itself. Insurance quotes are brutal. Financing terms feel heavy. Ownership costs stack up quickly. Rumors from inside dealership groups suggest that even serious riders are hesitating, not because they doubt the bike's performance, but because they question where they can actually use it. The Fireblade SP is unapologetically extreme, and that extremity limits its audience far more than Honda anticipated. Sales managers quietly admit that foot traffic is strong, but commitment is weak. Buyers admire the bike, talk about MotoGP influence, carbon wings, and chassis rigidity, then step back and say they need time. That delay is lethal for inventory. The spicier chatter suggests that Honda's production confidence didn't fully align with real-world demand, leaving some dealers with units that were never supposed to linger. Once buyers sense that imbalance, everything shifts. Negotiations get tougher. Buyers start asking about incentives that might be coming. Dealers begin offering flexibility they won't put in writing, better financing, extended warranties, accessory bundles, anything to avoid openly cutting the price. And once whispers of softness spread, buyers wait even longer, convinced that the Fireblade SP will eventually crack. The bike's personality doesn't help. Electronics make it feel composed at first, almost approachable, but experienced riders know how thin that line is. The Fireblade rewards aggression and punishes hesitation, a trait that excites racers but scares street riders. That fear translates into caution at the point of sale. Dealers are caught protecting Honda's flagship image while quietly worrying about floor space and incoming shipments. No one wants to be the first dealer to blink, but everyone is watching the clock. The Fireblade SP didn't get out of control on the road, it got out of control on the balance sheet. When a motorcycle this expensive stops moving, it sends shockwaves through the network. Pride turns into pressure, exclusivity turns into exposure, and behind closed doors, the question keeps coming up. How long can they hold the line before price drops become unavoidable?